Hey guys, thanks for joining me on the Primed Fatherhood podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Condi, and this episode, number 20, is the second and final part of my interview with Andy Springer. If you listened to episode 19, you probably got a feeling for how enthusiastic and energetic Andy is as we discuss the power and process of networking. In this second part of that interview, I was really impressed by the things that he does to stay engaged with his kids and wife. As we talked, I realized that there's 5 key elements that make up the success that he has in staying engaged with the kids and keeping them out of trouble and on a positive path. We have answered the call. We are committed to a greater purpose. We are fathers. Past achievements do not guarantee future success. We will prime ourselves often to navigate each new challenge. We are capable, brave, and relentless. We will remain undaunted. So, we had talked before about how you had had some really hard situations and learned some great lessons from that. Let's shift gears and talk about.
Yeah, you know what you hear all the time is, I'm so grateful for my trials because I've learned so much. I wish that was not true.
Yeah.
But some of my best life lessons have always been in, and I still look at it at the worst times of life. I don't look back and say, I'm grateful for that trial. That trial sucked.
Right.
I can see the good that's come from it, and I try to be a spiritual guy, and there was this a few years ago. I just felt something big was about to happen. I was hoping it was like business related. I'm telling my wife, I told her, I was like, Kelly, her name was Kelly. I'm like, I think something big's going to happen this year. I'm feeling it. And my parents just so happened to be in Ohio, living in Ohio at the time. They were service missionaries for our church. And so it was the spring, I can't remember which month, and my dad called. And I just got the strongest feeling, like just my whole body just radiating like, this is it. This is what you've been being prepared for. And my dad says, listen, we found this kid. He's literally from Africa. He's an orphan. He's homeless. We've tried to help him out here, but he's just surrounded by terrible people and just is making absolutely terrible decisions. And we just want to get him in a better environment. Will you take this 20-year-old kid, into your home? And I'm telling you right there, my whole body was just radiating like, this is it. Of course I'm going to have to say yes. I know this sounds crazy to bring an absolute stranger to my house, but this is what my parents have always done, and this is what I've been prepped for. This is going to be an amazing experience. It was the worst 2 months of probably the 2 of the worst months of my life. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was terrible. I'm telling you, terrible. My wife and I, the community bent over backwards for this kid. I'm telling you, I had him lined up. I got him graduated from high school. I had multiple business owners in town, doctors, you name it, and like coaches and anybody and everybody you could think of there just willing to help this kid out because he had such a unique story. And it took him about 2 weeks to find weed, and that's all he cared about, and he was just an avid liar, and he just was just broke every rule that we could think of, and he was just lazy. Oh my gosh, he was lazy, and I just cannot deal with laziness. I can be very, patient. I was so patient with him, but what it came down to is it was not going to work out, and it didn't matter what we did. He chose not to take any of the help. He just chose that all he wanted was drugs. That's all he wanted. And that environment was just toxic, absolutely toxic in my house. So we gave it a good shot for like 2 or 3 months, honestly. And then we had to send him back, and my wife and I are just like, that was so terrible. Why did we do that? And I just kept thinking, why did I feel so good about that? Well, to this day, my kids, my 3 boys, I have 3 boys, they will make references of that situation and be like, this kid's name was Joseph, you know, and they're like, yeah, just, man, Joseph, I saw him do that, and I will never in my life decide to do that because I don't want to do what Joseph did, and I don't want to be like him, and I don't want to do that. And he was just such a bad example. He was a good example, if that makes any sense at all.
Giving him the boundaries.
And I feel that some of my kids, I have a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old now. They're old enough to make some decisions, and they've been around enough to where they could have made a lot of really bad decisions. Mm-hmm. And I feel that because of that experience several years ago, they have chosen to stay away from certain things. And I should be grateful, I guess, for that experience because of that. And they have openly told me that, Dad, I'll never try that stuff. And I'm not judging anybody. I know it can be controlled, and I know this kid was out of control. Like his body, his life was so out of balance, and that was just so important to him that nothing else mattered. And that's what it had come down to. And my kids are just see that, and they're just like, I don't want to be that, Dad. And I feel that was probably why maybe one of my kids would have made a decision that would have taken him down that same path, because we have addiction issues in my family, you know, related issues in my family. And so I'm hoping that might've kept my kids away from that. So that was that was kind of a long story. I'm sorry, but my gosh, my wife and I still look back and say that was the worst summer ever.
Well, if your boys came out better for it, then that's awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. That's just one of the examples, you know, and of course I have more, but.
Yeah. That reminds me of a study that I read. I can't remember if it was from World War I, probably from then. I just know that it was a study of like Irish people. There was so many bombs being dropped in that area that 2 things happened with the people. The people who lost family and friends or were injured by the bombs became scared and attentive and typically left, and they went to a safer area that wasn't a war zone. But there was a vast majority of the people who lived in that area who had all these near misses and never had anything bad happen, and they became completely desensitized to the war and to everything that was going on. And I feel like that's the way it is a lot with addiction, and with people who are around it versus people who actually experience it. Those who have someone in the home who's dealing with it usually see the effects to the point that it scares them enough that they don't let themselves go down that road. Whereas if it's the next door neighbor and they're just kind of seeing it from the outside looking in, and they're not seeing all the effects, then that Nearmiss Syndrome, whatever they called it, I can't remember what the psychologist called it, but that desensitizes them to the danger of a lot of those things. So
that's a great analogy, and I wish it weren't true, but it is. I in my personal, you know, dealings in life, it actually is. You're right. When it hits close to home, when it's your aunt that's addicted to prescription drugs, your normal aunt, the one that you've loved your whole life, that you just care for and love, all of a sudden it's not some crazy druggie. It's, oh my gosh, that's my aunt. No way. And then I'm so much more empathetic now to people who have been in her same situation. And that's all it took was one dead hit in my family. And next thing you know, I'm much, much, much more empathetic toward that situation than I ever have been. That was years ago. So yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's awesome. So in thinking about kind of your willingness to jump in and let a stranger come in, live in the house, and the way that your family was always sharing, I want to talk a little bit about the coaching and things like that you've done with your boys and things around the community.
You know, I always wanted to be a school teacher. My dad was a school teacher, and my dad was an administrator at the time, and he was dealing with some washed up teachers, you know, and just like any career, sometimes people just get burned out. And he was just like, Andy, you'd be a great teacher, but are you sure you want to do this? And this is going to sound extremely greedy, But I said, yeah, Dad, I think I can do it. And I said, so yeah, I'm going to go get a degree and then I'm going to come back and I'm just going to be a starting teacher. And I was working in a bank at the time. And I'm like, how much do they make again? And he told me starting teacher. And I said, Dad, I'm making that right now. And I said, so I'm going to go to school for like 4 years and come back and make the same amount of money I'm making right now. He's like, yeah. I'm like, maybe finance isn't too bad. And I've been in finance ever since. Yeah. But I haven't lost my love for teaching. So anytime opportunity I get, I take advantage of it. And coaching has been one of those opportunities. And it's been out of willingness. And I would say out of, I've been forced to coach as well in a good way. Positive force, enforcement. And what I mean by that is I started my business 16 years ago, and I'm not kidding. I loved every minute of it. I could have worked all day long in it. In the meantime, hey, you're a dad. Hey, you're a husband. Hey, you've got other things in life that you need to take care of, but I just loved working. And so my wife, she was so funny. She would sign me up for things because she knew that it would make me stop. Not that I didn't want to coach my kids or not that I didn't want to help, you know what I mean? But it truly wouldn't make me stop. And so I remember one time I had a gym bag full of soccer balls and jerseys show up in my office. And I call them up. I'm like, hey, what's this? They're like, oh, you're coaching. I'm like, oh, say what? What? Like, yeah. And you sponsored the team. I'm like, okay. So apparently my wife committed me to not only sponsor this little soccer team, but to coach this little soccer team. So what that would make me do truly is like, okay, I had to schedule practices and we worked as a really good team. I'm like, Kelly, you schedule the practices and I will be there. And so she would schedule the practices and tell me, when to be there and this and that. And so I have always, it's the same way as my fitness. Like if I sign up for something, I get prepared to do that. Like, so if my wife would sign me up to coach these kids, I truly would take, the time to prepare them and do it. And I loved coaching them and I loved doing it. But I also loved the fact that my wife understood that in order to get me away from some of these things that I get so distracted with, that she would just sign me up and I would go coach. And I've done that ever since. I've always been involved in my kids, whether it's from fundraising or coaching or whatever, and for two reasons. One, because I love it. Two, because it forces me to be a more balanced person. Because you know how it is. If you can do the office all day long, you just never get it done. It just never gets done. You know? And so you have to just have limits. You have to say, I'm just cutting it off because I have this other event that I have to go to. And so that's what I would like in that too. But yeah, fun. I still get involved, still today with coaching the kids when I can or fundraising or whatever I can do. So
that's awesome. I know that coaching and things like that is awesome for spending time with your kids, and an awesome evidence of that is the TikTok that you showed me that your son had made of you doing all the goofy things, like where you're laying on your back and you jump up, do the ninja. I don't know what you even call that.
My football coach always called it a snap nair. I don't know if that's his word or if that's really what it's called.
When you jump from your back and your shoulders up onto your feet, and then had you walking around on your hands and slamming some dunks and on the basketball court and other stuff like that. Do you attribute a lot of the sports and athletics that you do with the boys to the relationships that you have, or is there other things too that have built that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just being around them and I think they like it. I mean, my youngest, sometimes I like to have fun with them, and I'm a little weird sometimes, and my youngest son, I'll drive him to school or whatever, and he'll just be like, Dad, nobody else's dad does this stuff. Like, you're weird, and his friends are in the back seat going, yeah, my dad doesn't do that stuff, and I look at it as a compliment, you know what I mean? I'm just being who I am and being fun with the kids, even though I come across as weird sometimes, I guess. But what's funny with my boys right now is the oldest, he's a smart dude. He's bigger than me. has been for years. He's a big kid. He's built more like my wife's brothers, and but he's smart, and he's never, even with his size, has never challenged his dad physically, because he knows I'll go crazy and I will just take him down if I have to, like it's in a fun, playful way. Right. But he's never, ever challenged. He won't even arm wrestle me, even though he thinks he's pretty strong. He goes to the gym a lot and he's a really strong kid. He knows it. He will lose. Like, I'm going to find a way to win every time. My second kid he's a spitting image of me. The only difference is that he's about 20 pounds heavier than I was his age, because he's figured out what the right nutrition and weightlifting can do. And I never figured that out his age. And so he thinks he's pretty tough, and he challenges me physically all the time. He doesn't arm wrestle anymore because I just take him down. His biceps are bigger than mine. So he thought he could take me one day, and then I gave about 2 seconds and I took him down in less than that. But yeah, we tend to wrestle quite a bit more. He's a little feisty, and he measures every day, I swear, if he's taller than me. And he hasn't learned the lesson yet that old man strength comes a long way, and because he's big, he's a strong kid, but I can still take him down. It's kind of fun. But so those types of things they're fun. We have a lot of fun with my boys that way. But one thing that I've done, from the very early years, when they were babies, my wife, she took care of them like babies, and not that I didn't want to or wasn't willing. I listened to your podcast. I'm, God, he's such a good dude. But like, I remember like being awake, trying to feed the baby once, and my wife just sitting there watching me. And I'm like, the whole purpose of me doing this is so you can sleep, But she's so worried about me doing it the right way that she never slept. So really, neither of us got sleep. And I'm like, this isn't working. So I literally, with her blessing, would just let her deal with it. And I slept the whole night. So my experience with young babies is totally different than yours, because my wife was the zombie and I got all the sleep, just because she was okay with it. But here's what's funny about that. As soon as they could walk, it was all dad. Anytime they would wake up in the middle of the night, it's dad. Anytime, they needed something, they're sick or this, it's dad. So my wife like smirks because she's like, yes, it's your time now. When they're the little terrible twos, or whatever, that was all me. And I think a lot of that is because just naturally the routine that we would have is, my wife was just exhausted from these kids. At the end of the day, I would come home and I would put them to bed. I would read them stories, read them books. We loved to just sit and read books, tell stories, and then I'd put them in bed. And I did that every single one of them, when they were little. And I think that I didn't do it because I'm like, I'm going to create this special bond with my children, and always, it was nothing other than I wanted to give my wife a break and I wanted to settle my kid down. And we truly enjoyed reading, Dr. Seuss books or whatever, and putting him to bed. And I loved that. And I think they loved it. And still today, it's harder as they're teenagers. At that point, it's just like, bleep and go to bed. It's freaking midnight. You got to school. I can't go to bed till you go to bed. I mean, that's more of the conversation now. Not every night. Of course, I'm a little nicer than that sometimes, but I beg him to go to bed now, and so. But I loved doing that, and I think that was a big part of that bond that we created with each other. As I grew up, I'm not a perfect dad, and I definitely still do a lot of apologizing. That's probably another thing that I would recommend. Is there's time where I have to eat crow and just go to my kids and be like, I was wrong, sorry. Especially my oldest, he's really forgiving, and I literally play this card every time. I'm like, son, you're my first. I was wrong. And a lot of it's usually because my wife is like, I can't believe you said that. You gotta go talk to him right now. You can't do that, And so I'm like, you're right, dear. I'm sorry. And then I go to my son, I'm sorry. I did this wrong. And he's always like, that's all right, Dad. I know I'm the first. It's okay.
I know I'm the first. That's awesome.
Now that they're teenagers, it's like sometimes we'll end up with 2 different cars. And, we'll all be down in, St. George or something. And somehow we end up with 2 cars. And it's like, one of them has to ride home with dad, not that they don't want to ride home with me. They just know that like, if it's like one kid is coming home with me, like it's dad talk at that point, it's like, boys, let's tell you about the birds and the bees and danger of pornography and drugs and alcohol and what the importance of having good friends. And it's like, and it was like that for a bit, and now it's just fun to just talk to them about who they are, what they do, and show interest in their life. A lot like when you had Delin on there. I really liked what he was saying, and I've been trying to implement more now that they're older, even, some of the stuff that he was talking about. So it's good stuff, and like I said, I'm definitely not perfect. And I think especially my youngest son, he thinks I'm more weird than awesome, I think. But, that TikTok video that my second kid made, I think he was kind of making fun of me, but I also like looked at it and I'm like, but then it got like over 10,000 views.
Yeah.
And he's like, it got me respect from him, like Dad, I initially did this because I was working on my house and he literally was stalking me. I didn't know this. He was always taking pictures of me, working on the house and doing different projects. And I guess there was some meme going around about dads in Home Depot or something. And so I was seriously always at Home Depot, working, fixing up my house and remodeling it. And he would just do these little videos of me working on these projects. But then he mixed in that little video of me showing off, because I'm always showing off to my kids to show them I'm the alpha. I mean, I'm still the guy. You can't mess with me. And so I'm like doing backflips and, like you say, walking on my hands and just, I'm like jumping on top of the counter, doing box jumps up and down on the counter, and they're just like, Dad, you're a freak, and just, I just got to show them I'm still the alpha, but so I think he was kind of making fun of me, but then when I got that many views, he's just like, respect, Dad. That's impressive.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that you can hang with the boys and that you keep that physicality going, So, and I have to clarify, I don't feed the newborn a whole lot. It's more like in between feedings. If she's still fussy, then I'll take her so that Carla can sleep a little bit. But yeah, I'm not a ton of help. And
good. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And I've talked to friends and they've been extremely helpful through the whole process. And I'm just like, listen, I tried, but my wife just won't let me. So
yeah, you got to do what works for everyone, and it changes with different stages for sure.
No,
but,
for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as like you said earlier, you've always been really into sports. That's been one of the things that you've done with your boys. What else do you get out of it? Out of staying fit and pushing yourself and being as involved in it as you are, because you're spending a good amount of time on it and you're staying way more fit than the average person. So,
well, I've learned that to keep that energy going, fitness and fuel, I call it, or have a lot to do with it. So I've always tried to eat right and do things that kind of maintain that energy level, and then just you work out and adapt my workouts to what my body allows. And I laughed. It was just today, matter of fact, I was talking to my kid. I'm like, he was talking about something he was eating, and I told you he's into big muscles these days, and I was talking about some food, and he's like, "This is fuel, Dad." Like, what do you mean? I'm like, what? He's like, "It's just fuel. I don't eat it for flavor. It's just fuel. I need fuel, Dad. I need fuel for these muscles, as he's flexing for me or whatever." And that's kind of the attitude we have in the house now, is we eat for fuel, not for I guess enjoyment, even though we do a lot of enjoyment. So
That's awesome. That's cool. As far as your routine goes, are you one that believes you have to work out in the morning or at night, or how does that go?
I don't know if I'm the right person to ask, because I hate the fact that every successful person I know is a morning person, because I'm not. I'm a night person. But once the kids started getting older, and once I started getting more involved in their stuff, I was forced to be a morning person. If I wanted to work out, it had to be in the mornings. And but I didn't just automatically not become a night person. So then I became a night out and a morning person all at the same time. And
Insomniac.
that's where, no, I would sleep fine. I would sleep fine. It's just very little. I would like 5 hours. I did several years where I'm like 5 hours, 5.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I really learned the importance of food, the right amount of time, right amount of caffeine too, to keep me going. And then as I got older and I was like, okay, you need a little more sleep than that. And so then, there's studies everywhere that say 8 hours. I'm like as long as I get a solid 6 to a solid 6.5, I'm good to go. And so, to answer your question, I have to work out in the morning if I want to get it done.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy waking up in the early morning. I'm not Travis. Oh my gosh, that dude is incredible. Travis is one of the first podcasts. If you haven't listened to it, he just inspires anybody and everybody. So yeah, I mean, I can't get up that early. I don't enjoy getting up there. I just do it. Like my body hurts in the morning, and so it's like, but I do it because that's my only option if I want to. It's getting a little easier now that my kids are older. And COVID shut down every fun activity you can think of,
Yeah.
So I have more time to do it at night. So I will go with my wife or something, at night from time to time, but still the morning is by far too many distractions in the day, and I heard a guy talk one time. He said, if you make an appointment, if you make working out for an hour a day, like as important as your most important client, then you do it. And that's what I do. I just have always just made it an important part of my life, whether I like it or not. And because of that, just like your best clients, you fit them in wherever you can. And that's what I have tried to do. And, I'm the perfect maintainer. I'm not huge and I'm not the fastest. I'm the perfect mediocre person that you can think of, you know what I mean? But I'm comfortable with that, and feels good. And I feel like I can keep up with the kids most importantly. And that's what I want. So right now, anyway, at the spry age of 43 or whatever. Yeah. 43.
That's awesome. I think it was episode 18. I talked about the morning routine and talked about how, that was something that really changed the game for me, was solidifying that routine and really pushing the limits there. And I tried to talk about sleep, but I don't know that I did it justice in that point. But yeah, I said the same thing. There's studies everywhere that say you need 8 hours, but when it comes down to it, I track my sleep with the watch and the fitness apps and stuff, and I feel every bit as good at 6 hours as I do at 8. And if I go any over 8, I feel weird.
Groggy.
Yeah.
Yeah, my back hurts.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying they're not me.
Yeah.
And my body says I'm good with this and I'll probably die earlier, but man, it's because I've been up 2 hours longer than they have. Getting more done.
Yeah, exactly. and that does show, you've got a lot of business ventures going and some awesome successes and some cool stuff in the works. So that's pretty exciting. It's
been fun. No, I truly, I'm happy. Time is, there's an author, Tim Ferriss, he talks about time is the new rich. And I've grasped that concept and realized that I truly enjoy having time and flexibility to do what I want and enjoy, and the stuff that I don't want to do or enjoy, I try to help find people that are smarter than me and better than me that do those tasks. So
yeah, you really are a great example of that. For those who are new dads or who are looking to kind of step up their game, what have been some of the other things that you've done to help you to be more productive so that you can spend more time with the family or be more in control of your time?
Be married to a good woman.
There you go.
I give a lot of that credit to her because it's easy to get out of balance. It's true. And some advice that I would give that was given to me as I would try to departmentalize my life. Well, these hours are work. These hours are church. these hours are kids, these hours are this. And it was actually a busy mother that I heard this from, and I loved her response. And she said, there's times in your life that you'll work more than you'll be with your kids, or you'll be with your kids more than you work, or you'll be helping out with your church more than you'll be doing anything else. And so she said, it's not about the balance, it's about the focus. And I know she didn't come up with this, but it was the first time I had heard it, and I loved it. And so for me, I'm 24 hours a day. I try to limit myself to only 3 businesses. I have so many good ideas that I just can't wait to do. But I try to limit myself. I force myself to limit myself to these 3 that I'm working on right now. And they're 24/7. But guess what? I also am a father 24/7. I'm also, I have callings in my church where I serve 24/7. What I mean is I don't try to dictate time of when I do these things anymore. I just try to dictate focus. When it's time to focus on that, I try to focus on that. When I'm with my kids, I try to be present. I'm not awesome at it. There's times when I'm better than others, but at the same time, I truly just try to spend time focused. So if you are a new dad or and new dad typically means a lot of times you're also starting a new career or school or whatever, just because, a lot of us start when we're younger and all these things are new.
And a fairly new relationship.
Yes, a lot of that stuff. And so I would say, don't worry about the balance and worry about the focus. And when it's time to be at school, be at school. When it's time to be at home, be at home. When it's time to be with your kids, be with your kids. And I wrote down this equation once that quantity is not greater than quality. Meaning 4 hours with my kids is not greater than 2 hours with my kids, as long as those 2 hours with my kids are focused. I got more out of reading those little books to my kids when I was starting my business than I think I ever would have just being home during the day with them. I got a ton out of that. And that was not quantity of time, it was quality time. And I always have just tried to focus on that. And when I lose my focus on that, that's where my wife comes in. And she always reminds me, sometimes nice and sometimes not. It's like, you need to just put that away, do this, whatever. It's time for this. And I'm grateful for that. So
that's awesome. That is a huge help. And I think that's great advice that I probably need to follow better. I find myself trying to work on the laptop in the evenings or something. And Gemma's running around, being crazy. And I'm worried about the computer getting broken, not playing with her and being present, so.
We all do that, by the way. That's normal.
Yeah.
Especially with these stupid phones that we have. Yeah, it's easy to get distracted. So easy to get distracted with text message and everything else, that can come through in a million different ways. So
for sure. Well, I really appreciate the time that you took to share with us and to share what's working for you and share some of your stories. And is there anywhere that we can go to contact you or to learn more about what you're doing with your different businesses?
I think I joked with you earlier. My kids are always like, Dad, what do we tell people when they ask what you do? I do several different things. I just love it. But if you want to get a hold of me, it's info@andrewspringergroup.com. And that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And if you needed to contact me for any way, shape, or form, and I'd love to get to know you and see what I can do to help you out. That's what we do.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. If you're in Utah, Andy will have some way to help you or something else. But
I got a buddy
there's
somewhere.
There's a good chance if you're in the U.S., Andy will know someone. So, awesome.
Thanks, Tyler. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it, man. I enjoy your podcast. So keep up the good work, and we'll keep primed and fathering and doing the best we can. Dang it.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. I hope you enjoyed this final part of my interview with Andy Springer. He is such a great example of an engaged father. The 3 things that I picked out from this discussion are: number 1, get involved and don't fight the forced involvement. I like the story of his coaching and how he's just always volunteering to help, because he knows that making that commitment to as many different people as possible, not just the kids, creates the accountability that get you there and get you to stop working and be where you really should be. Number 2 was get on your kids' level and do what they do. I loved that he's trying to show off for the kids and try to do cool things, and that they take notice of that, and that he's, down there wrestling and playing sports and doing all of those kinds of things. I felt like that was a great example of how to stay engaged with them. The third one was apologize. Apologizing and admitting you're not perfect is really hard to do when you feel like you're supposed to be the shining example of what to do. But in reality, it's that vulnerability and that willingness to show the respect and the love that comes with an apology that makes a really big difference in building a relationship. So I loved that he's doing that with his boys. The fourth one was how he balances the dad talk and the parenting with just listening and getting to know the boys. I feel like, for me especially, I'm always wanting to stick to the rules and just push, whatever the next thing is that has to get done. But that reminder of just taking the time to listen and balance the parenting and the corrections and the dad talk was really great. And then the fifth thing that stood out was that you've got to stay fit and keep your energy up so that you can lead from the front of the pack and really just stay engaged and keep the pace that the kids have. I think that Andy's an awesome example of that. He really is really fit. He's done lots of physical competition and things, but now that he's got the boys, that's where the real competition comes in, and that's fun, but it's also important to be able to keep up with them. So Andy, I really appreciate you coming on. You're an awesome example, and I appreciated your time. I appreciate everyone who has listened or watched to the podcast today, and I hope that you'll subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review, and that you'll continue to join us for new episodes every Monday and Thursday morning. Please join the Primed Fatherhood Facebook group to rub shoulders with Andy, with myself, and with other dads who want to be the best husbands, fathers, professionals, and just men that they can be. Because that's what this is all about, is helping us to be the most well-rounded, most prepared, and focused men and fathers that we can possibly be.